Welcome to another episode of Where's My Diagnosis? In this episode, Carrie digs through 2 decades of symptoms and medical reports, and a troubling pattern starts to emerge. This episode reveals just how many warning signs were there all along and how easily they were ignored. To kick us off on this episode, we're going to start, Carrie, by going back to the support group that you found, and obviously we're aware had a big impact on you and your journey. So I think you said this was around November 2022. Talk to us about what that group was and how things went from there.
Yeah. 2 weeks into the recovery from the gynecological surgery, where I had my left ovary and both tubes taken, I found this online support group for appendix cancer, and I joined them, and it was a weekly thing I did every Thursday for 2 hours for 2 years. And I learned so much about my disease, and I just had this sinking feeling that everything that had happened up to that point in regards to my medical care was wrong. And I was just getting advice from people who have been through it, and women in particular. I related to so many of their stories, and so many women misdiagnosed for years with fibroids, endometriosis, different things like that, different benign conditions, and it turned out to be this rare cancer. So I started thinking about all of my scans that were talking about fibroids, and I just started talking more and more to the women in this group. Some have had the disease for 25 years, and so they have so much knowledge and information, and they have at their disposal all of these expert surgeons in America that we just don't have. There's 1 or 2 in Australia and none in Melbourne. So you just get given to a young colorectal surgeon, and that's what happened to me. So yeah, meeting these people, I just started realizing far out, I really need to study and learn everything I can about this disease, because all of the different hospital admissions that I had, there were so many times when I'd present and then they'd ask, for your past history and stuff. And then I'd be in the system, they'd look me up and they'd say, appendix cancer, what's that? And I was just like, I just got sick of hearing that. So
Really?
Yeah. And just
It's just bizarre to me. I mean, even as a layperson.
I mean, any organ can get cancer, right? So why is the appendix? But then people think, well, the appendix is a useless organ,
Yeah.
which it is. But it doesn't matter, because once it escapes that organ and it's stage 4 cancer, which is what I was given, then it's outside and it can go anywhere like any other cancer.
So this support group, so to be clear, this support group, and so you refer to recognizing what you just described as my cancer. Is that because the appendix cancer is known to, once it leaves the organ itself, then turns into something that is rare that these other people experienced also?
Yes. So if it's appendix cancer, what's different with especially the low grade cancer, if that escapes the organ and the cells go outside, it just creates this mucin. And if you think about lava, I think I talked about that last time, about the snot, I called it, but it's just like this lava that just kind of slowly creeps, and then you have to have that horrible surgery.
Yeah. Mm. So with the support group, obviously you're learning a lot, you're starting to do your own research. What was it that started to make you question your own care, in terms of, obviously you've said you've started to look at things more closely, but what are you then starting to do to take action yourself?
Well, I have to go back to the beginning and just start understanding what cancer is, and then what it is in relation to appendix cancer and how that differs to real cancer. That's because they don't even think of appendix cancer or a low-grade appendix cancer as an actual cancer.
Mm.
That's what I was told by someone in the group. And one of the
hence the it's just a little cancer.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. So
nice.
it's just so the lamin is not really considered a cancer. So once that escapes, they don't really take it seriously, and you're on a wait list. And I've spoken to people in Australia who have the disease, and one woman she was diagnosed, I think, back in 2012, and at that point it was a 6-month wait list, and now it's blown out to 2 years. So they have this way of, I guess, measuring your peritoneal cancer. So your peritoneum it houses all of your organs essentially. And so when you have a cancer, a gastrointestinal cancer or an ovarian cancer, you like, they're called those silent killers because you don't really have symptoms until it's everywhere. And I can't remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah. So this woman in 2012, her PCI, the peritoneal cancer index, was a 7. It goes all the way up to 39, and it just kind of your peritoneum is quadrant. It's into, I think, nine quadrants, and then it just measures how much cancer is in each part when they do the laparoscopy. And the longer you wait, the more it spreads, so the more organs you lose.
Yeah.
So it it's not uncommon when people have, and now it's a 2-year wait list for lamin, and people go from 7 or 8 or 9, like it's mostly just in the pelvis, which if you think about gravity, that's why it tends to go to the pelvis, and then everywhere else if it's not intervened. And so they'll have like a score of a 7 or 8, and then 2 years later it's 20, 30, and they lose more organs.
So what happens from there? So you obviously have got to this place of awareness, alarm, I'm assuming.
Yeah, alarm. And I think my biggest takeaway, other than all the misdiagnoses that happen, is it's imperative to have an appendix cancer expert take out your appendix and make sure that there's no mucin and stuff that's found in the peritoneal cavity. And that never happened to me. Mine was taken out in the emergency room by a young colorectal surgeon. He's an oncologist, but again, you need an expert. And this cancer is so rare; it's a 1 in a million cancer. So you need to know what you're doing. And I never had that. So that was a really important piece of information to have. So then I went and found an expert in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened from there in terms of finding an oncologist, connecting with the specialist?
I had to find another oncologist because the little cancer guy, I just I wasn't interested in seeing him anymore.
Well, why would that be?
Yeah, it's just his little mind.
He was in Melbourne though, wasn't he?
He's at Peter Mac.
Right.
So I went to see a more experienced oncologist. I paid for that visit, and then I had because I was just looking at this surgery that I had previous, like 2 weeks previous, and I had received the USB drive that had the surgery on it. And like I was saying, I watched that thing just constantly, and I just kept noting different things. And I would go back to find other laparoscopies online, and I'd watch that, and I'd look at the endometriosis surgery. And the endometriosis is disgusting, but I'd sit through all of those, and I'd look at mine. I'm like, it doesn't look the same at all. Then I spoke to the oncologist about the discrepancies, and I showed him some of the images that I had questions about, and he said, yes, those do look like mucinous, like peritoneal implants, and they were on my ovary. And I said, well, she hacked away at one of them and left several there. And then he said, well, doesn't matter. You could be symptom free for another 15 years. And I said, but I'm having symptoms now. And he said, well, that's impossible. And I went, no, it's not, because this is what I started studying. And because I was having all these scans and they kept saying, you're clear. There's no evidence of disease. And I was like, why am I so sick? And like my chest is so sore. And I mean, it's still like, if you can hear me, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my breathing today. But I just didn't understand why I wasn't getting better and why people weren't taking what was happening to me seriously. And at that point, I said, well, I am having symptoms now. And then he said, well, that's impossible. And I had researched it, and it was between 40 and 70% of people with this disease can have symptoms and it not show up on a scan. And a lot of the people I was talking to, that was another common thread, that so many people, their scans were clear, and it wasn't until the surgeon got in and saw disease everywhere. So it's hard to detect on a scan. And because some of the implants are so tiny and there's so many folds in places, like the bowel goes for like hundreds of feet, doesn't it? So there's just so many places for it to hide. And that's why you need the expert. And then, so he agreed to send me to the expert who's in Sydney. And then I spoke to him. My partner and I at the time, we went up to Sydney, and it wasn't even him going to be doing the surgery. It was his associate. And we met, I think, 2 days before to sign papers and stuff like that, to give permission and to take biopsies and everything. And so she came out to greet us, to invite us into her office, and she was so rude and cold, and I just didn't understand why she was treating me so horribly. And that kind of became what I noticed. I was just being treated like shit by all of the medical professionals. The nurses were nice to me, but the doctors were always horrible and dismissive and saying that it was, just cancer phobe or all stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, am I really a cancer phobe? Like, I've never, anytime I had an ailment, and I said, like, I've not had many, but I have had issues with my back that we talked about, my spine, like my neck, and headaches and stuff. And I've just, anytime I had a complaint, a physical complaint, they've always found a reason for it. So she was rude to me, and then she had 2 pieces of paper, and she was on the other side of the desk, like where Karen is sitting, and my partner was where you are, Kev, and I was here. And so she had the 2 pieces of paper, and she was reading to me off of the one under her right hand where it said biopsies and laparoscopy. And then I had to sign them. And then with her left hand, she just slid another piece of paper, and she goes, can you just sign here, please? And I didn't think a lot of it. I thought, oh, it's weird that I'm signing another one. And that one only said, it said laparoscopy only. And then I thought, well, they must just staple the 2 papers together. And I didn't really think much of it because I was just so taken aback by how rude she was. And so then I went in and I had the surgery, and I woke up. No biopsies again were taken. And she said there's no evidence of disease, no evidence of any endo. Well, that's not true, because there was a fibroid left from that gynecological surgery that was just hacked away at for a little bit and then left. And the surgery ended, and that was still inside me. It's still inside me right now. And she said, well, some things on the scans aren't really there. Like, you can see things on a scan and it's not there when you go inside. I said, no, this wasn't a scan. This was from the actual laparoscopy. I have the video. I sent it to you guys. And she had her mask on, but I remember her eyes. She just widened and she looked fearful. It was really weird. And so that was another thing that I clocked. I'm like, I noted that and just how rude she was. And then she looked fearful. And yeah, it just, what she said didn't match what I knew for a fact. So why is she lying?
So, okay, so what then?
Well, then
Sorry, it's not a very intelligent question, because again, it's just, I always find it so mind-boggling.
Yeah, they just discharged me. They said, no, you're fine, into the care of your GP again. And so I was given my discharge summary and these grainy black and white images of, I think, 12 or 18 pictures. I couldn't make out anything because it was just so horrible. I couldn't make out anything. And then it just had they redid the pathology that Peter Mac downgraded to a stage 3, and then they upgraded it back to a stage 4. But then I noticed that
who did that?
Sydney, the specialist in Sydney, they had it repathologized, if that's a word, and they upgraded it back to a stage 4. But then when that surgeon who operated on me wrote to my GP, she said that it was a stage 3 and there was no evidence of disease or endometriosis or anything. So no cause for my symptoms. And so, yeah, that's kind of where that was left. And I wrote to the specialist who didn't do my surgery, but I wrote to him because he was the one I was expecting to do the surgery. And I said, what about the implants and stuff? And then I actually sent him a picture asking him, are these or are these not peritoneal implants in my pelvis? And he never got back to me. That was February 2023. He never answered my question.
Did you chase him up?
I chased him up a year and a half later. My friend and I walked into his office.
And what response did you get then?
I had requested because they were the ones who had my USB of the surgery. And they said they never watched it. And then they said they didn't have it. So they said first they said that they would mail it to me. And then 6 months passed. And then I just said to my friend, I'm never going to get that back. And I said, let's go to Sydney. And so we did. We jumped on a plane, went to Sydney. So I walked in and asked for my file, and I needed the USB back. And it was a young woman at the desk, and she didn't know who I was. And she said, oh, sure, no problem, and asked for my name, and I gave it. And then she went and got my file. And then she went back. And before she got back to her spot at the desk, the older woman who's, I guess, the surgeon's, whatever they're called, not like
PA?
Yeah, PA. She was so rude to me. So my friend was sitting to the right of me, and she could just see the look on their face when they opened my file. I didn't see it, but my friend said they just looked shocked, and the younger girl put her hands over her face and was just like, they didn't know what to do, and then they kind of laughed. And then my friend told me that, and I just said, come on, let's get up and make them talk to us. And then the older lady started talking, and she kind of took over, and the young girl just left. But I noticed that before I got to the desk, that's what made me get up. I could see the older woman. She went to the corner and she turned her back, but I could see that she was texting somebody. She just did like a 5-second text. And then that's when I told my friend Sally, I said, get up, we need to see what they're doing. And then I said, I need that USB back. And then the older lady was going through my file, and she said, yeah, we don't have a USB. I said, well, that's impossible because I sent it. And then I had the email ready that she had acknowledged that she received the USB a year and a half ago. And then I just said, hi, Carrie. Just want you to know that we got the USB. And I said, are you Lynette? And she goes, yes, I am. And I said, interesting. So you have the USB, just kind of gave me the runaround. She goes, it's not there. And then I looked beside me, and the guru himself is standing to the left of me. And I just kind of felt him. I didn't know it was him initially. And he just stood there. And my friend and I, like, he was a big guy. He's old, but he's still really big. And I'm only like 5'4", 5'5". And so I just kind of looked and I acknowledged him. I said, hello. And then he walked past and he had this blue folder. And I don't know why he was in the office, because he was just standing there with his back to us, looking at this folder. And then he started whistling. It was so weird. He just started to whistle. And then I said, I need that USB. And she just kept looking. And then she said, she goes, oh, here it is. And I mean, it's a chunky USB. You can feel it, like how hard, like the right fumble fingers. Like it was just like, what is going on? So we get the USB. And then my friend asked for any information in that file about the gynecologist. And then we knew there had to be, because that's who they would have rung to get my previous information. And then we named the woman, and she again clumsily flipped through the papers, and she's like, nope, no doctor, beep. I was like, interesting. Okay, thank you. And when she said, that's right. So when my friend asked if there's anything from that specific gynecologist in my file, she kept, when the PA was flipping through, that's when the professor was whistling. He continued to whistle, and then he stopped whistling, and she gave me the USB, and then he walked away. He walked out a different.
Bizarre.
It sounds like I'm making it up.
That's what was going through my head, is that this could be out of like some, I don't know, spy movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's just weird.
Yeah, but I have a witness, and it was absolutely bizarre. So there I was with the USB.
And can I say, there you are with the USB and your symptoms.
Oh, I'm
right?
so
Like, nothing's
sick.
changed.
Nothing's
Let's all
changed.
remind ourselves that you're still really sick
and
have no answers. Because now they've confirmed that it's not endo, right? Which was the previous.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what
they said it's stage 4 endo. I'm like, really? I've never had the symptoms of stage 4 endo. That's curious. And then I don't even have endo anymore, according to that surgeon. So yeah, it really, they've really got me back into corner. And then, so sick as I am, head to Sydney, and then we rush off to a library because I needed a computer to make sure that, because it was a different USB as well. That's right. And I said to my friend, I was like, this isn't the same USB. And she goes, oh yes, we were like, I can't remember what her excuse was, but it was a different USB. So I went to the library, confirmed that it is the same surgery, and it was. So I was really relieved about that. And then we came back to Melbourne, and yeah, I'm still no better. Getting worse.
Yeah. And dear listeners, we will be leaving you in the perplexed what the state that no doubt Carrie was feeling at that time.
Still am.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. To support Carrie on her search for answers, follow her on Instagram and X. Visit her website where you can view the evidence for yourself.
When we work out how to do
it. Which is flyingonbrokenwings.com. We especially invite medical experts to comment on inconsistencies in the various reports and images that we share. Clearly, if you are a medical specialist that can get involved and help to actually get to a diagnosis point, please let us know.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.